better live up to a lot after that introduction, so thanks. So I was asked to, are we gonna, somebody advancing? Are you guys, is there a clicker? Ah, perfect. So I was asked to come and talk about some of the CJIS next generation initiatives that we have going on. So I'm gonna do that, but before I do that, I kind of want to level set everybody. I'm not sure who knows what CJIS is, where CJIS is. So we're on about 1,000 rolling acres out in West Virginia, out in Clarksburg, West Virginia. And it's a little diamond in the rough out there. I moved out there, I guess, about a year ago. And frankly, it's a little piece of heaven out there. I have a 15-minute commute. I used to live here, used to live in Ashburn, used to commute to DC. So I've gotten back a couple hours of my life from moving to CJIS, so this is just, I didn't want to bring an org chart, and I think everybody gets bored with org charts, and plus they're an iChart. We have 2,600 employees, so I don't think you could see what I put up there. But this just really outlines kind of the top level. So today we have an assistant director who just retired last week. I have assumed the acting role, so thank you, Dave, wherever you are, for retiring and leaving that to me. But we have two deputies, and the projects I'm going to talk about are shown here, and you can see under which deputy assistant directors they are. Oh, man, I'm not good with this thing. So these are the next generation initiatives I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go through these right now with you. You can all read, but this is just kind of the outline of what I'm going to cover. So next generation identification. It's our replacement for IAFIS. I'm sure you're all familiar with IAFIS. And I keep telling the team that when CSI and the other shows on TV start referring to NGI and stop referring to IAFIS, we've made it, right? We will have done it. So this is a high-level roadmap. We show this to many execs. It kind of helps frame what the whole process and how the increments went. So this summer, we're going to deploy increment 4, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But just this past year, we deployed increment 3, and increment 3 had a new latent algorithm, and we have a database now to collect palms, and we have quite a few palm prints already. So a lot of the reasoning behind that is people committing crimes often leave a palm print rather than just a fingerprint. And so if we can begin to collect those at booking, when we have latent prints at a crime scene, of course we can bounce it off our database and perhaps make an ident, right? So the other piece of that is the latent piece. So the algorithm that we put in place is, I think, about 3 times better than the algorithm that we had previously. And so you can imagine we've gone back and looked at some cold cases of fingerprints we had stored, and we are getting some hits. And these are brand new leads. Some of these cases are decades old, and it's pretty amazing. I kind of keep saying, if the criminals who are out there who thought they got away with it for decades, it's going to be I can't even imagine the agent or officer's face when they arrest that person, right? They will have thought they've gotten away with it for years. Some of them we've seen have moved to different states, right? Thinking that, well, they'll never find me because I won't be applying for jobs in this state with fingerprints, and so they'll never get me. Well, this national database is going to catch, I think, quite a few new people. So increment 4, let's talk about that. Wrap back. As one of my colleagues says, there was, that old saying, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, that's probably not true anymore. So with wrap back, if you're enrolled, if the state has enrolled you because you're in a position of trust, you'll be registered in the national database, and we will search the database for your prints all the time, right? And so if there's an arrest that happens, if you get a DUI in Vegas and you happen to be working in Indiana, it's not going to stay in Vegas. It's going to go back to that agency, and that agency is going to now, do whatever it feels and deems necessary. I think it's really fantastic because states have been doing this internal to the state for some time, and they can only search so that the arrest has to happen in their state. So if somebody goes to another state, they're never going to know. And so for people that we hold in trust, I think we want to know, right? And we want to at least have a conversation with them about how they may have violated that trust. We're also enhancing some of the face work that we've been doing, and we'll be expanding face in terms of providing software to states so that they can use our facial recognition software to search back into our repository. And I'm going to talk about face services in a few minutes, but what I want everyone to know, and I want to drill this in as much as I can because we get a lot of media requests and civil liberties groups that are concerned about what we do with face. In NGI, we only hold mugshots. So the time of booking, we get the photo, it comes into NGI, and that's all we hold. We don't have social media pictures. We don't take stuff off your iPhones and your Androids and store those. We don't have any of that in NGI. NGI is a criminal history. And so if you don't have a criminal history, we don't have you. And then increment 5, we've begun to look at IRIS and conducting an IRIS pilot. And so one of the things we've discovered, because I always ask, when I first came on, I said, what's the business case for IRIS? Right? Typically you don't leave an IRIS at a scene of a crime. And if you do, we probably know who you are, right? You're missing an eye. So the team went out and really came back to me and said, sheriffs are interested in it for moving prisoners because it's easier than fingerprinting. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of force sometimes to get somebody's hand and unshackle them, right? And I think they'd prefer to keep them shackled. The Bureau of Prisons has also said to us that they could use it for transporting and for moving prisoners within the prison. So I think there's going to be tremendous value in this. And we're already seeing some of the technology that's out there is being bought by some of the sheriff's offices, some of the police stations across the country. So I think there's going to be value, and we'll see more of that. We're piloting with a handful of states right now. So where are we going with biometrics? Well, Senator Byrd, Congress, the FBI, and the Department of Defense we think there's a lot in the future of biometrics. So we've built a building to house and do the research for biometrics. This building started in 2011, and probably late fall this year, we will probably take occupancy and start moving in. And so there's a portion of this building that's also the Department of Defense. So we're combining forces in some ways on identity and biometrics. And so it's great. It's going to be a great partnership. But it's in a fantastic building. The building I think it's going to be, by the end of it, it's going to be a gold LEEDs. So it'll be, it's completely green. The thing has grass roofs, and it's crazy stuff. I don't know how we're going to mow that. I keep asking, and somebody says we're going to get goats, and I'm like, well, how are you going to feed the goats outside on the roof? So face. So we stood up because face was becoming pretty popular in the States, and so we stood up a service, and this service is just for the FBI. So when an agent has a case, has a lead, maybe has a photo of somebody, this team goes off and does that research on behalf of the agent. What this team does is they search and do analysis and comparisons on the mugshots, on NGI. They also have agreements with certain states, and those states have their own legal authority to run against their DMV photos and any holdings that they might have. So we don't house any of that. I just want to make that point clear again. We go to the state. We actually send them our probe, the photo we have of the suspect. We send it to that state. They run the query against their database, and they provide back what might be some potential leads. I also want to emphasize that face is not an exact match, right? It's not an identification of a person. It's a lead for that investigator to go off and do more research. It takes them down a path that maybe they didn't have before. And so we have seen already success story after success story coming out of the face services group. It's a pretty powerful tool. So again, just so everyone's aware, we don't do social media, and we wouldn't do that. We are only allowed to do what we can do by law, right? And we're only allowed to do what we can do typically by a court order. There has to be a case associated with this. So we don't just an agent just doesn't come to us and say, hey, I got this picture. Could you check out and see, this might, and then you find out later, it's the boyfriend of the guy's daughter, right? We have to have a case. There has to be a case that's open in order for us to do a search. So, and what you'll see in some of these pictures, and I'm going to show you in the next set too, but the pictures at the bottom, the ones with the red X's, in order to do the matching for face, right, the pictures have to be pretty pristine today with the algorithms that we have. So you can't have a head tilted, right? You can't have, there's got to be the right lighting. You can't have certain things in the pictures. So when we get the mugshots in, we have to do a lot of scrubbing. I mean, in fact, in one of the presentations that our team gives, they show some pictures where officers have taken the mugshot photo, and there's another officer in the background, right? So now you got two faces in it. There's some at the border crossings where they've got, like, a woman has several children, right, that she's carrying. So now there's kids' faces in, that has privacy concerns and privacy issues. So these are just really to illustrate that sometimes we don't get the type of picture that we need, and there's a standard that we're developing for this. So these are the types of cases in the Bureau that we have used face to help drive out some leads and help hopefully solve some cases. And then again, you can see down at the bottom, you've got the picture of the woman in the middle with her jacket, right? And it's in the way of the picture, right? It can cause the algorithm to not necessarily pick up on some of the matching. And then the gentleman on the far right with his mouth wide open, right? That can have, so facial expressions matter. We'd like them to not have facial expressions. We can get that. And I don't know what you're so happy about being booked, but that's a whole different thing. NICS, I don't know how much you're familiar with NICS. I would hope that if you read the paper, you know a lot about NICS. So we've had some pretty stellar, just high transaction days. And typically our highest transaction days in a year are Black Friday, right after Thanksgiving, and believe it or not, Valentine's Day. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I know my wife hasn't ever bought me a gun on Valentine's Day. I'm kind of disappointed. So if you're out there, honey, I'll take a gun for Valentine's. It's coming up, right? It's coming up. So we had this Black Friday, you can see up there, we had, that was our highest day in 2013. And it was just a bit lower than our previous year. But we still, those are tremendous numbers. That's in one day, right? 144,000 transactions, people trying to purchase guns. And then in December of 2012, Sandy Hook, right, the whole discussion of legislation, we had the highest day we've ever had, 177,000. So we're busy. We're busy with gun checks. But so what I'm going to talk about in terms of a next generation project is we've been building our phase one of our new NICS. And the new NICS is really to help replace and automate some old workflows, right? Some old processes, some manual processes. We are trying to help our legal examiners do their job a lot more efficiently, right? And then get back to the public as quickly as we can. I mean, again, I don't know how much you know, but NICS, when we get the transaction in from the FFL, right, which is the Federal Firearms Licensee, when we get that transaction back, we have 3 days to turn it around. So if it comes back and it's questionable, somebody might have a record by the name search, we have 3 days to get back to them, or legally, they can turn over the weapon, the firearm, to the purchaser. And then we still will research, and if we find days later, then we have to go do, ATF has to go do a gun retrieval, right? We don't want to be in that position. So we're trying to automate it and trying to get, again, better search algorithms for us, better tools so that we can look at the criminal history records and really just try to speed up the process for us. The other thing that we're doing, and it was very successful this year, we rolled out e-check. So now FFLs can actually go online and do their transactions that way. And so I've actually seen it in action at Cabela's, and at Cabela's, they have the customer input the information, they check the ID, they hit a button, and most of them come back as deny or approve right away, they get it instantaneously, and they can make that transaction. So we are advancing, and there are 3 phases to this. We've also included a voice over IP for our call centers, so we've reduced our long distance exchange calls because our call centers are in different states, and so they transfer calls back to us, and we were incurring a tremendous cost to do that. So now we have VoIP in place. And so those are the phases. I think phase 2, as I said, we're trying to integrate some of the VoIP in with the processes, and we hope at some point the VoIP will allow us to do an automated attendant where the FFL can actually just type in all their information or say their information over the phone, and then it's just sort of goes through the e-check system and bounces back to them with here's the transaction, it's approved or denied or delayed. UCR, and I think you're gonna have, there's a session later today, I think, to discuss some UCR information. So I'll give you a sort of a high level. What we have been trying to do the last year is upgrade the technology, right? Today, the way we do and collect the UCR information is sporadic. Sometimes it comes in paper, sometimes it comes in on a disk, sometimes it comes in a file that's sent. It's not always electronic. We are trying to move to get everybody to input the information electronically, and so we're trying to make that easier for them to do. That's one benefit of what we're trying to do. I think the second is now for the public, right, and any researchers or anybody that wants to know what's going on in my state, what's gone on for the last 10 years, they can go and do that stuff themselves pretty easily, right? I mean, we have that technology exists already out on the web. So we're trying to get ourselves to that, and we're trying to get out of the business of publishing the actual reports. We have books, right, that we publish that cost money. And these days, it's not exactly green, right? I'm not sure it's, who wants paper and try to search paper when you can just search the web. So that's really in a nutshell where we're headed. So here's kind of a high level of the program. There are a set of rules that have been generated over time for every state, and in some cases probably even some of the agencies within the state. These rules have just become extremely complex over time. We can't get rid of all of them, but we are trying to automate them. And what we ran into was the vendor and us, we didn't realize how complex it was going to be to implement this into a web-based technology. So we've run into a few snags, and we've delayed it purposely. We still are using and doing our old legacy methods, and we will continue to do that until we can deploy this. But our new goal for deploying this is in March. So our original plan and hope was to get it out by the beginning of this year, and that just didn't pan out. And so we weren't going to roll out a product that people couldn't use. So this is my last one. NCIC, I hope you're all familiar with that. So officer pulls you over, does a search of your license plate, does a search of you, and they do that through NCIC. So NCIC, the last really big deployment was in 1999, so it's a little outdated. We're looking to, but it's performed great. So we've really tried not to mess with it because it's sub-second response back to the officer on the street. It's pretty impressive. But we think that there's a potential for new requirements. We think that there's different things that law enforcement wants to do with the information that we house and how they use it. And so we are looking at generating those requirements. And then if we have enough new requirements, we may do something. We may build something new. We may enhance what we already have. We're not there yet. These are the next steps for that. One of the things we run into is this Paperwork Reduction Act. So we can't just go out and poll people, our customers. So we're trying to get creative on finding ways to get our requirements from them. So this is it before I guess I have a question slide, but I don't know if we're going to do that. But I just want to say thank you to IJIS for having us and letting us kind of show off what we're doing, and I want to just reiterate how proud we are to be partners in this thing. So I want to keep that going. I just got into this job about a year ago, so I really don't know that much about IJIS, to be honest, and I was doing research before I came here, and so being a technologist, I'm pretty excited about it, and I want to engage you guys more, so I look forward to doing that and learning more about IJIS. So I don't know if I'm allowed to take questions, but if anybody has anything, I probably overrun my time, knowing me. I'm on time? All right. I like to hear that. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.